I believe I am live. I believe I am live. And I want to test out my...
In this assessment, we're following the structure of priorities that were laid out in the President's national security strategy, starting with threats to our homeland and then shifting to global risks. The defense of our homeland is of the utmost importance to the American people, and efforts by this administration over the last year to bolster homeland defense have yielded significantly positive results. For example, the strict enforcement of U.S. policies at the U.S.-Mexico border and regionally have served as a deterrent and drastically reduced illegal immigration. Based on Customs and Border Patrol data, January 2026's monthly encounters are down 83.8% compared to January of 2025. The drivers of migration are likely to continue. Potential worsening instability in countries like Cuba and Haiti risk triggering migration surges. Smugglers who often operate as transnational criminal organizations view chaos as an opportunity for profit and will likely continue to profit from these illegal immigration flows. These TCOs continue to pose a daily and direct threat to the health and safety of millions of U.S. citizens, primarily by producing and trafficking in illegal drugs. Under President Trump's leadership, fentanyl overdose deaths have seen a 30% decrease from September of 2024 to September of 2025. His aggressive efforts to more directly and actively target these transnational criminal organizations and reduce the inflow of fentanyl precursors has already had a significant impact, which is likely to continue. Mexico-based transnational criminal organizations like the Sinaloa Cartel and Jalisco New Generation Cartel dominate the production and smuggling of fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine, and cocaine into the United States. Colombia-based TCOs and illegal armed groups like the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia and the National Liberation Army are responsible for producing and trafficking large volumes of cocaine into the U.S. and European markets, with some indicators that they are now attempting to expand to the Asia-Pacific region. Colombia remains the world's largest producer of cocaine, and Colombian criminal groups have expanded their trafficking relationships with neighboring Ecuadorian and Brazilian gangs. MS-13 is well established and sells in the United States and uses violence to intimidate the Salvadoran diaspora, engaging in murder, extortion, retail drug trafficking, firearms offenses, and prostitution, fueling increased violence and instability. These and other TCOs present a very tangible and individualized risk of violent crime to everyday Americans and contribute to regional instability. As the President increases counter-drug and counter-cartel pressures, they are likely to seek ways to try to adapt their operations, including shifting and decentralizing production locations and trafficking routes and methods. The United States continues to face a complex and evolving threat landscape with a geographically diverse set of Islamist terrorist actors seeking to propagate their ideology globally and harm Americans. Even as Al-Qaeda and ISIS organizationally remain weaker today than they were at their respective peaks. The spread of Islamist ideology, in some cases led by individuals and organizations associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, pose a fundamental threat to freedom and foundational principles that underpin Western civilization. These Islamist groups and individuals use this ideology for recruiting and financial support for terrorist groups and individuals around the world, and to advance their political objectives of establishing an Islamist caliphate which governs based on Sharia. There are increasing examples of this in various European countries. President Trump's designation of certain chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood as foreign terrorist organizations is a mechanism to secure Americans against this threat. In response to setbacks of their capabilities of conducting large-scale complex attacks, the IC assesses that Islamist terrorist groups have shifted towards focusing on executing information operations to spread propaganda and inspire or enable individuals located in or with access to the West. U.S. counterterrorism operations are ongoing, primarily in Iraq, Somalia, Yemen, and Syria, and have removed key terrorist leaders and operatives, degrading the ability of Al-Qaeda and ISIS to quickly reconstitute its leadership and launch large-scale attacks against the homeland. Strict U.S. border enforcement measures and increased deportations of individuals with suspected links to Islamist terrorists have reduced access to the homeland and removed some potential sources of
Oh, this
future
is
terror
definitely
attacks.
double feeding my mic.
Since January, U.S. officials have only had a handful of encounters at our borders with individuals associated with terrorist groups. Positive trend, however, are interagency coordinated efforts to identify, locate, and remove known or suspected terrorists already in the U.S. continues with vigilance. In 2025, there were at least 3 Islamist terrorist attacks in the U.S. Law enforcement disrupted at least 15 U.S.-based Islamist terrorist plotters. Roughly half of last year's disrupted plotters had some online contact with Islamist terrorists inspired by Islamist foreign terrorist
I
organizations
need to get a
abroad.
mic.
Al-Qaeda and ISIS pose the biggest threat to U.S. interests overseas in parts of Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia, where these groups operate. In the Middle East, AQAP in Yemen, ISIS-K in South Asia, and ISIS in Syria are among the most likely groups conducting external plotting. ISIS in Syria specifically is likely seeking to rebuild its ranks, expand support networks, and solicit funds by re-engaging with and recruiting from the likely hundreds of ISIS detainees and thousands of ISIS-linked women and children who escaped or were released from prisons and displaced persons camps. Meanwhile, state actors present a risk broader in scope by seeking new capabilities in kinetic and cyber warfare. The U.S. secure nuclear deterrent continues to ensure safety in the homeland against strategic threats. However, the IC assesses that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and Pakistan have been researching and developing an array of novel, advanced, or traditional missile delivery systems with nuclear and conventional payloads that put our homeland within range. The IC assesses that threats to the homeland will expand collectively to more than 16,000 missiles by 2035, from the current assessed figure of more than 3,000 missiles. The IC assesses that China and Russia are developing advanced delivery systems meant to be capable of penetrating or bypassing U.S. missile defenses. North Korea's ICBMs can already reach U.S. soil. The IC assesses that it is committed to expanding its nuclear arsenal. Pakistan's long-range ballistic missile development potentially could include ICBMs with range capable of striking the homeland. The IC assesses that Iran has previously demonstrated space launch and other technology it could use to begin to develop a militarily viable ICBM before 2035, should Tehran attempt to pursue the capability. However, these assessments will be observed and updated as the full impact of Operation Epic Fury's devastating strikes on Iran's missile production facilities, stockpiles, and launch capabilities is determined. Shifting to the cyber domain, the IC assesses that China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and non-state ransomware groups will continue to seek to compromise U.S. government and private sector networks, as well as critical infrastructure, to collect intelligence and create options for future disruption and for financial gain. The IC assesses China and Russia present the most persistent and active threats and are continuing R&D efforts. North Korea's cyber program is sophisticated and agile. In 2025 alone, North Korea's cryptocurrency heist probably stole $2 billion, which is helping to fund the regime, including further development of its strategic weapons program. Financially or ideologically motivated non-state actors are becoming more bold, with ransomware groups shifting to faster, high-volume attacks that are harder to identify and mitigate.
I'm just trying to figure out how to...
Innovation in the field of artificial intelligence will likely accelerate the threats in the cyber domain.
How do I get my chat to...
It will increasingly shape cyber operations, with both cyber operators and defenders using these tools to improve their speed and effectiveness. For example, in August of 2025, cyber actors used an AI tool to conduct data extortion against international government, healthcare, and public health emergency service sectors and religious institutions. Shifting to the Arctic, the IC assesses that Russia, and to a lesser extent China, aim to strengthen their presence in the region through increased maritime trade, natural resource extraction, and military activity. Russia, which has the longest coastline in the Arctic, has long sought recognition of its quote-unquote polar great power status and is deploying more military forces and building new permanent infrastructure. China, though not an Arctic country, is engaged in more limited efforts in the region to advance its strategic and economic interests. On the technology front, artificial intelligence capabilities are rapidly advancing and changing the threat landscape. As this is a defining technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning, comprehension, problem solving, creativity, and autonomy, it'll be critical to ensure that humans remain in control of how AI is used and of the machines that may threaten to autonomously violate the interests of the American people across all domains. The IC assesses that China is the most capable competitor in this field and aims to displace the US as the global AI leader by 2030. AI adoption at scale across the spectrum of usage poses serious risks. AI has the potential to aid in weapons and systems design and has been used in recent conflicts to influence targeting and streamline decision-making, underscoring the risk and likely threats that could manifest on the battlefield by 2030. Early developers in quantum computers will give countries an extraordinary technological advantage over others to quickly process national security information and break current encryption methodology used to protect sensitive finance, healthcare, and government information. The global security landscape is volatile and complex, with armed conflict growing more common and posing potential threats against U.S. interests. The space domain is becoming increasingly contested, with China and Russia developing counter-space capabilities to challenge U.S. space efforts. The threat of nuclear proliferation and advancing chemical and biological warfare capabilities continues to grow.
Okay.
Turn now to the Western Hemisphere, where flagging economies, high crime rates, pervasive organized crime, migration flows, corruption, narcotics trafficking present a broad spectrum of risks to U.S. interests, and where strategic competitors seek
I just don't have
greater
access
influence
to
in the region.
Chat.
The IC assesses that Latin America and the
should be able to
Caribbean
see
almost
my
certainly will see
chat.
hotspots of volatility in the coming year, with the potential to undermine or distract some countries from improving economies and living conditions and tackling illicit drug flows and cartels. The U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement review in 2026 will likely increase uncertainty in many Latin American countries, especially those that rely on Mexico as an export destination for intermediate goods for manufacture and onward export to the U.S. China, Russia, and Iran are seeking to sustain economic, political, and military engagement with Latin America. The IC assesses that China's demand for raw materials is likely to drive continued economic outreach, while Russia likely wants to expand its current security and diplomatic ties with Cuba and Nicaragua. The IC assesses that China aims to elevate its own political, economic, military, and technological power to increase its own regional positioning, global influence, and to fend off threats to their interests. While there are challenging areas where interests diverge, President Trump's diplomatic engagements with President Xi have enabled progress on areas where mutual interests align. The IC assesses that China continues to rapidly modernize its military forces across all domains in pursuit of its goal to achieve world-class status by mid-century. This includes building a force with the aim of being capable of deterring U.S. and allied forces in the region, and to achieve their stated objective of having the capability to seize Taiwan by force if necessary. However, the IC assesses that China likely prefers to set the conditions for an eventual peaceful reunification with Taiwan short of conflict. An increasingly confident North Korean regime remains a source of concern regionally and globally. Its weapons of mass destruction, conventional military capabilities, illicit cyber activities, and demonstrated willingness to use asymmetric capabilities poses a threat to the U.S. and its allies, particularly South Korea and Japan. North Korea's partnership with Russia is growing, and in 2025, Kim took steps to improve ties with China, still North Korea's most important trading partner and economic benefactor. The IC assesses that North Korea's support for Russia in the war against Ukraine has increased North Korea's capabilities as their forces have gained combat experience in 21st century warfare along with equipment. Pyongyang continues to develop and expand its strategic weapons programs, including missiles that can evade U.S. and regional missile defenses. Russia retains the capability to selectively challenge U.S. interests globally by military and non-military means. The IC assesses that the most dangerous threat posed by Russia to the U.S. is an escalatory spiral in an ongoing conflict such as Ukraine, or a new conflict that led to direct hostilities, including the deployment of nuclear weapons. The IC assesses that Putin continues to invest in Russia's defense industrial base, as well as novel capabilities that may pose a greater threat to the U.S. homeland and forces abroad than conventional weapons. The IC assesses Russia has advanced systems, hypersonic missiles, and undersea capabilities designed to negate U.S. military advantage. Russia is also building extensive counter-space capabilities to contest U.S. space dominance. Its development of a nuclear counter-space weapon poses the greatest single threat to the world's space architecture. During the past year, the IC assesses that Russia has maintained the upper hand in its war against Ukraine. Ongoing U.S.-led negotiations between Moscow and Kyiv continue. Until such an agreement is met, if an agreement is found, Moscow is likely to continue fighting a slow war of attrition until they view their objectives have been achieved. In the Middle East, conflict and instability will shape security, political, and economic dynamics in a variety of ways. The IC assesses that Operation Epic Fury is advancing fundamental change in the region that began with Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, continued with the 12-day war last year.
I would love to be able to see myself and to see my chat. Damn, I might have just turned that bitch off. I don't know why the audio went to.
With the IAEA, refusing them access to key facilities. The IC assesses that China, Russia, and North Korea see the United States as a strategic competitor and potential adversary. Iran has long viewed the U.S. as an adversary and is engaged in active conflict with the U.S. as of this writing. These four countries are likely to continue their selective cooperation with each other, which could bolster their individual capabilities and threats to U.S. interests more broadly. However, currently these relationships are primarily bilateral on selective issues and depend on broader circumstances, divergent sovereign interests, and in some cases concerns over directly confronting the U.S. These factors are likely to constrain their relationships. Finally, conflicts on the continent of Africa are likely to persist through 2026 due to poor governance, economic demands, and external support. Tensions continue between Ethiopia and Eritrea, which could rapidly accelerate to conflict. Contentious national and federal elections in Somalia could distract the federal government away from counterterrorism actions against al-Shabaab, which continues to conduct terror attacks while providing funding and propaganda support to other elements of al-Qaeda in Yemen. The civil war in Sudan continues even as external negotiations occur, and ISIS in West Africa and the Sahel have increased the intensity of their attacks against local security forces, expanding their areas of operation and moving closer to cities with a U.S. presence. African governments will use their wealth and critical minerals to seek partnerships that deliver them meaningful benefit. Concurrent conflicts and crises across the continent will continue to put U.S. citizens at risk and cause further instability. In closing, as leaders of the intelligence community, we remain committed to providing the President and policymakers with timely, unbiased, relevant intelligence to ensure the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Director Gabbard. We appreciate that. We'll now move to member questions, 5-minute increments. With that, I recognize myself for 5 minutes. Director Patel, our state and local officials are on the front lines of increasingly dangerous unrestricted warfare activities being undertaken by Chinese nationals, such as marijuana grow operations protected by armed militants, secret police stations engaged in transnational repression, Chinese-operated sim farm sites, crypto mining facilities, and land purchases near strategic locations. The CCP is exploiting legal gray areas and the lack of awareness at the state and local level to establish strategic footholds. 2 states, in fact, New Hampshire and Florida, are now advancing legislation to establish offices of counterintelligence, which would bolster states' ability to confront foreign adversaries without relying on the federal government. Do you support that? What can be done to better support the states and local officials?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have infused funding into our entire program taking on the CCP. And while we are well versed in the fact that we
Chinese
have
People's Party
with folks like CFIUS when it comes to the purchases of land around military bases, that only extends 1 mile under the current law. So the FBI had to get creative. So what we did was directly engage with our state and local partners. And I'll give you 2 examples. A 400-acre farm in the state of Texas was owned by a CCP official, but because he was outside the reach of the CFIUS law, the FBI executed a unlawful possession of firearms, a criminal complaint, and received it. We seized the land in its entirety, and that CCP national is back in mainland China, and we are working to get him back here. In another example, off the coast of Louisiana, we worked with Governor Landry's team on drilling sites off the coast of Louisiana because, again, they were outside the whole of CFIUS in the 1 mile radius. And with the intelligence we were able to provide our state and local authorities, they shut down that CCP drilling center, which we believed was actually used to provide and steal data and intelligence from American lives. So that's just a little bit of an example. Of the marijuana grow houses, we have 6 active ongoing investigations in 6 multiple jurisdictions for specifically taking down CCP-affiliated grow houses from Maine to Georgia and across the country.
So it sounds like, from your characterization of CFIUS, it's inadequate at this point. Maybe we could do something legislatively here in this body to provide some broader authority to address that challenge.
I would love that.
Okay, great.
Wish I would've
Excellent.
caught
Thank
it
you,
here.
Director Ratcliffe. In January 2021,
This is such a
in
solid
your role at DNI,
setup.
as the director,
Fuck.
you sent this committee a letter outlining your
Break
concerns
and
about our
recess?
intelligence community assessment, in which, among other things, analysts tailored their
Same
analysis
channel,
towards a
it's a
preferred
break and
policy
recess here.
outcome. CIA management pressured analysts to withdraw their support from an alternative viewpoint, and the full body of intelligence reporting wasn't considered. Now, in your role as CIA director, you have retracted several reports for political bias and not meeting IC analytic standards, which that's good progress. Retracting faulty reporting is a critical step, but I remain concerned about that it maybe doesn't get to the root of the problem. How many analysts were involved in recently retracted?
Excuse me.
I don't know the specific number, Chairman.
What remediation actions have taken place as a result?
Well, I've made the focus of, as you pointed out, both as DNI and now as CIA director, focused on the importance of analytic objectivity. As you pointed out, when I was the DNI, when I saw conduct from Russia and China, the exact same conduct result in different assessments, that's not a good reflection on the analytic judgments. What you referenced in my role as CIA director, withdrawing reports that we went back and looked.
I'm not gonna push it out right now. I'm just testing the waters. I'm gonna have to. Next time I go live, it's gonna be.
Those judgments because they show bias and influence for political reasons or otherwise. So that has continued to be a focus and will be. I think that message has been received within our analytic community, within the CIA, and really across the CIA, because this administration has put a focus on taking politics out of our analytic judgments.
Excellent. Thank you, Director. Appreciate that. I want to, as I made clear in my opening statement, I'm just trying to get this done in a little time that I have remaining. The intelligence community assessment on AHI is deeply flawed, and I've called for its recall immediately to start for for a fresh start, similar to my question in last year's session, but I'd like to get a yes or no answer from each of you on whether you agree this ICA should be retracted. Director Gabbard,
Yes.
Director Ratcliffe,
The ICE, say it again, the question.
AHI, ICA.
Yeah, so, for the ICA, I understand that Director Gabbard is reviewing that, and I've deferred, all AHI investigations to her review. So if in her judgment that is something that should be retracted, then,
This is like
then I would agree with that.
And yes, okay, Director Patel,
Yes.
thank you. General Hartman
Yes.
and General Adams.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you all for your responses. I'm going to recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Director Gabbard, as was well covered yesterday in January, you were present at the execution of an FBI warrant at the Fulton County, Georgia election office at the direction of the president and to all appearances in connection with the president's false claims about the 2020 election. The unsealed affidavit submitted by the FBI made zero reference to foreign powers or outside interference. I don't want to relitigate
I'm pretty
the
bright
reasons why
once
we were there,
I-
but I do want to know whether as a result of your visit there is credible intelligence in your possession pointing to foreign interference in Georgia in the 2020 election.
Thank you for the question, Ranking Member. As you know, over each of the previous elections, there is an ongoing effort by different foreign entities.
Ma'am, it's a very
to try to
specific question.
interfere in
Is
our
there
elections.
intelligence in your possession relative to foreign interference in the 2020 elections? Very simple, straightforward question.
We are continuing to look at previous attempts to interfere in our elections and any ongoing threats that may exist for the upcoming elections.
Okay, but can I assume that the answer to my question is no, that you have no specific intelligence related to foreign meddling in the Georgia election?
We are continuing to look into this matter.
Okay. Director, the ODNI has
That's not no
confirmed on the
fucking
record
answer.
that your office took custody of voting machines from Puerto Rico last May. I'm not aware of any previous DNI taking similar actions. Did your office promptly notify the committee about taking custody of Puerto Rico's voting machines?
I don't believe we did. However, this was done at the request of the Puerto Rico AUSA attorney.
And it's a
and
yes or no question.
the
The answer,
FBI.
as you have acknowledged, is no. You did not inform the committee about the taking of a territory's voting machines. Is there a specific foreign threat? And I've read the reporting that you were looking for possible foreign threats, but is there a specific foreign threat that drove you to take this action?
There were questions about whether or not there were vulnerabilities that a threat could have taken advantage of, and that was the purpose for their requesting us to look into those vulnerabilities.
Where are those voting machines now?
I believe they are held in a secure facility at ODNI.
Have you or other ODNI officials taken any other state or territory's voting equipment into custody?
Not to my knowledge.
I want to turn the subject of elections to a paradoxical thing. You will all be aware that the U.S. government is apparently going to grind to a halt. The president is going to sign no more bills. The Senate will spend 2 weeks apparently debating the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act, of course, would make illegal foreigners voting in U.S. elections, which is already illegal. So we are to do no more business because of apparently the existential threat to our democracy associated with foreigners voting in our elections. I am therefore puzzled by the fact that neither the unclassified nor the classified threat assessment makes any reference to risk or danger associated with foreigners voting in our elections. Director Patel, how many non-citizens have been convicted of voting in U.S. elections in the last 10 years?
The conviction stats are with the Department of Justice. I defer to them on that.
You are the director of the FBI. Give me a guess. How many convictions in the last 1 year, 5 year, or 10 year? Ballpark.
I don't have that with me, sir. Again, it's with the department.
You don't have that. Okay. Director Patel, how many active investigations does the FBI have into foreign individuals voting in U.S. elections?
We have a number of investigations, generally speaking, ongoing about individuals across the country.
Yeah, I'm asking for that number.
I don't have that number with me, but I have a number of them.
You have a number of investigations. Okay, is that number 10,000, is it closer to 10,000 or closer to 10?
It's probably somewhere in between.
Okay, will you please?
These niggas playing, bro. These niggas just playing, bro. Are you kidding? These niggas just playing, bro. These niggas is playing, bro. He said, is the number closer to 10 or 10,000? He said, it's probably somewhere in between. He said, probably somewhere in between. Really? Is it closer to 1 or 1 million? Probably somewhere in between, bro. Come on. You know what?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
What the fuck?
okay, will you please provide the committee with that number?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Director Patel, since you don't have the numbers, would it surprise you to know that the Heritage Foundation, which is not exactly the Columbia University Faculty Lounge, found only 77 instances of non-citizen voting in the 24 years between 1999 and 2023, each of which faced investigation by the appropriate authorities. So Heritage has a number of 77 examples in 24 years. Does that number surprise you?
No, because it's low.
I don't understand your answer.
I don't either.
Are you disputing that the number is in the range of 77 examples of non-U.S. citizens voting in U.S. elections in a 24-year period?
I just said that number's low.
You think that number is low? Okay. So why, if this is a
Why do you think it's low?
We have known, I guess I direct this to Director Gabbard, why is there no mention of this thing that will grind the American government to a halt for a 2-week period in the Worldwide Threats Analysis?
This annual threat assessment was shaped around the national security strategies prioritization of threats.
Bro, I don't get how this is a real strategy.
There are multiple platforms and venues where there have been and there will be reporting on threats to our foreign threats to our elections.
Yield back.
Gentleman yields. Vice Chairman Kelly.
I'd first just like to say, Director Gabbard, you being in Georgia was a part of your duties as DNI to make sure that our elections remain safe, secure, and free from every type of influence. That was why you were there. Is that correct?
Yes.
No.
I would argue, I want to talk about some of the points about the strikes on Iran, the current attacks, Epic Fury. And I would state that not only are there imminent threats from Iran, but there are actual threats. And I've been on the receiving
Director
end
of National
I was in
Television.
in Iraq in 2005, where Iranian-based and manned and equipped units attacked American soldiers, including
Director Patel, how many active investigations?
A number of.
Is it Williams that in the
Help me if I'm low.
his home threats and
Our nation and our nation.
grind the American government to a
Annual threat is
to Director Gabbard, why is there no mention of this thing that will grind the American government to a halt for a 2-week period in the Worldwide Threats Analysis?
This annual threat assessment was shaped around the national security strategies prioritization of threats to our nation and our nation's interests. There are multiple platforms and venues where there have been and there will be reporting on threats to our foreign threats to our elections.
Yield back.
Gentleman yields. Vice Chairman Kelly.
Okay.
I'd first just like to
If you
say,
say so.
Director Gabbard, you being in Georgia was a part of your duties as DNI to make sure that our elections remain safe, secure, and free.
So I think this is about the pullback. The question
Is
is,
that correct?
I'd probably wait.
Yes.
I probably don't take the cells yet.
I would argue, I want to talk about some of the points about the strikes on Iran, the current attacks, Epic Fury. And I would state that not only are there imminent threats from Iran, but there are actual threats. And I've been on the receiving end of those threats. I was in Iraq in 2005, where Iranian-based and manned and equipped units attacked American soldiers, including me, multiple times. I will also tell you I went
In
back in
2005.
1910 where EFPs developed by the Iranians struck my soldiers and our equipment. I would tell you the Houthis have continued to strike Saudi Arabia. I will tell you Hamas and the Hezbollah has continued to strike throughout the Middle East. And although we're not in an armed services hearing, we had that yesterday. But I will tell you, because we took out their ballistic missiles and their ability to defend from the air, that
But then my question would be just like, why are we conducting military operations in the Middle East? Why do we have soldiers? Why can't we just not have soldiers in the Middle East?
With that being said, Director Ratcliffe, I think the CIA has had a great year in providing intelligence, whether that's in Venezuela, the initial Midnight Hammer strikes, or also the current strikes in Iran. Can you tell us kind of some of the things the CIA has done over the past year that you're proud of?
For this one, for these type of breaks of trend lines,
I guess I'll start
I have
by
to be
saying,
careful.
I think you all know there was bipartisan concern when I took over the CIA that our human collection was in a downward spiral and had been for some period of time. And you all wanted a more aggressive CIA, one that was focused on core mission, one that was collecting the kind of intelligence and stealing secrets that would provide a decisive strategic advantage that could contribute to national security and foreign policy successes. I do think that the CIA, I agree with you, has had a great year, and that's a credit to our workforce. You talked about some of the very public successes like Operation Midnight Hammer and Operation Absolute Resolve, where our agency contributed to a frankly flawless intelligence picture.
Maybe I should be either it should be like I should be waiting for a break of the higher time frame of this previous all time high, or so it pushed up, came straight back to it, bounced, and the bounces are getting lower and lower. So yeah, you just have to be careful, and I think it's tightening.
When we talk about
right?
stealing secrets, you need assets and sources on the ground around the world.
So I think
in that regard, just in the past year.
I think
our foreign intelligence reporting.
we just have to kind of
Really matters to you
let
as
it move
decision
up
makers,
to the
the president,
upside
commander-in-chief. That's up
and
across the board.
and correct
25%.
down and back up. Like we have to get a legit move up. Like I feel like a push up here correction is a bad case for calls. I'm starting to realize.
Issues like counter-narcotics, our operations are up by 70%. With regard to counter-terrorism, those are classic.
Y'all need to move that door. Y'all need to move that door. Move that door. Move that door.
On the counter-terrorism front in the past year than in the prior 4 years combined.
You know what? The light to the face might be.
To the CIA workforce, morale at the agency is high because people are doing the work that they signed up to do, and this administration is calling on them to do more. I would say they're.
If I could steer back the final 45 seconds, I have one question for Director Patel. Director Patel, the current shutdown that is caused by us not funding TSA, Border Control, DHS, and all those things, how hard has that made the job of counterintelligence, FBI, to protect us here in the homeland from threats that came through our borders or internally and already existing in the United States, Director Patel?
Thank you for the question. When it comes specifically to the combination efforts between the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, we have 59 Homeland Security task forces that we have stood up in every single state, and then some, that are co-led by the FBI and HSI. And obviously having a stopgap in funding is hurting those abilities to go out there and fight crime and pick up violent offenders across the country. Even though the DHS workforce shows up every day, I think they've gone 1 month without a paycheck now. We also have things like our Southern Border Intelligence Center in Tucson, Arizona, that is our hub for intelligence collection operations on foreign terrorist organizations, specifically the narco traffickers down in Mexico.
Thank you. My time's expired.
So when the Republican asks a question, and it's gonna be like an easy question, right? It's gonna be like, so this is the problem with Congress right now. Democrats ask hard questions, Republicans ask easy questions. Like easy, and when I say easy or hard, I mean like a hard question, if you answer it directly, is gonna make your party look bad. And an easy question, when you answer it directly, is gonna make your party look good. That's it. It's about whether your party looks good or bad and not lying. And the easiest way to not lie is to be like, oh, it's about this, or it could be that, or I'm not sure at this time, I could give you that later. And it's just like, bro, of course you know. You know what I mean? Of course you know. Of course you do. You just don't want to admit you know in front of this type of forum, which is crazy that you could just kind of like withhold information. Like in this setting, of all settings, we need our people, our American people representing us, doing the most important jobs this country, some of the most important jobs this country needs us to do. We need that shit to be done right. But it's like, no, it's more for self-benefit. So like, if I start telling you how bad of a job I'm doing, if I start answering questions that make you realize I'm doing a bad job, then I'll get fired and so on and so forth, right?
13 service members have been killed in Trump's war, including Captain Steph Koval, a husband and a dad from my state of Indiana, and
Indy.
one answers. So is there any evidence that Iran intended to conduct a preemptive attack on the U.S. prior to beginning this war, yes or no?
Never gonna answer yes or no question.
Congressman, the answer to this question needs to be reserved for a closed hearing. I will say, however, the intelligence community does provide the assessments of the threats that exist to the president so that he can make that determination within the body of information and intelligence and activities within the region that ultimately he is responsible for. What is an imminent threat, and if there is an imminent threat, what actions need to be taken?
Congressman, as the DNI said, there's a body of intelligence that we'll be able to cover in the classified portion of this hearing that does reflect that in the likely event of a conflict between Iran and Israel, that the U.S. would be immediately attacked, regardless of whether the United States stayed out of that conflict.
Shifting gears to Ranking Member Himes' point, let me read to you from the 2025 Annual Threat Assessment under your watch last year. Quote, Moscow's malign influence activities will continue for the foreseeable future and will almost certainly increase.
Especially intelligence reports. Oh, it's classified. That's just the, oh my God, you'll never be able to get answers out of this. It's kind of pointless even listening to this.
Regardless of whether they affect election outcomes.
I'm not gonna lie.
In contrast, this year's threat assessment makes no mention of foreign threats to elections. Meanwhile, the IC has been publicly warning about foreign powers interfering in our elections for nearly a decade. So the omission is very striking. To that point, sitting here today, I'm not aware of any intelligence products in the past year dedicated to foreign plans and intentions toward current and future U.S. elections. Director Gabbard, yes or no, ma'am, have you directed or been directed to stop or limit dissemination of intelligence reports or finish intelligence reporting concerning foreign plans and intentions about upcoming U.S. elections or foreign threats to the midterms?
No.
Director Patel, same question for the FBI, sir. Yes or no, sir?
No, sir.
Director Ratcliffe, same question for the CIA, sir. Yes or no?
No.
Oh. They got the FBI, the CIA, and the head of Director of Intelligence Committee in this bitch.
General Hartman, same question for NSA, yes or no, sir?
No, sir.
General Adams, same question for the DIA, yes or no, sir?
No, sir.
I yield back, Chairman.
And the DIA,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gabbard,
Defense Intelligence Agency.
when you began your testimony, you stated that your remarks do not represent your personal beliefs. That's the first time I've heard that at a committee hearing. Why did you say that? Or is there anything in the threat assessment that you personally disagree with?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. The reason I've said that is twofold. Number one is when I assumed this role as Director of National Intelligence through the confirmation process and beyond, many members of Congress rightly said your personal views and your politics in this role get checked at the door. And as Director of National Intelligence, my responsibility is to report the intelligence community's assessments objectively and to make sure that they are not politicized in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, there are those who, for one reason or another, have tried to mischaracterize the intelligence community's assessments and saying, well, this is just a political view, or trying to misdirect from what the intelligence community is reporting. So I took the opportunity to state that from the outset, that this is the intelligence community's assessments.
Thank you. I also wanted to ask this because this week there was a high-profile resignation of Director of National Counterterrorism Center. Now, I want to be clear from the outset. I've communicated directly with President Trump my support for Operation Epic Fury, and I was very not only disappointed, but how inappropriate this letter was. And I want to read a statement that and get your personal assessment whether you agree or disagree with that. And that's this. Early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform and pro-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran. This echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed no imminent threat to the United States and that you should strike now. There was a clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie, and is the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into a disastrous Iraq war. Now, I cannot say how much I disagree with that statement. Do you agree or disagree with what this letter was put out by former Director Kent?
He said a lot of things in that letter. Ultimately, we have provided the president with the intelligence assessments, and the president is elected by the American people and makes his own decisions based on the information that's available to him.
But do you agree with, does that statement he made, blaming Israel, concern you?
Yes.
My next question is, I want to touch on the rise of terrorist attacks on the homeland. In the month of March alone, there were multiple high-profile Islamic terrorist attacks. You had Temple Israel Synagogue in Michigan. You had in Texas, you had an ISIS-inspired attack where they threw an IED in New York City. What is your assessment as to the rise of Islamic terrorism on the homeland?
As you've pointed to, Congresswoman, this continues to be an extreme concern, not only because of the rise of these attacks, but the mechanisms which they're carried out and the challenges that the intelligence community has in being able to try to detect some of these threats and attacks in advance. I'd like to defer to the FBI director on some of this because they have been very successful in many cases over the last year in detecting them and preventing these attacks. But due to the nature of the challenge in many of these attackers not having contact with known foreign terrorist entities or individuals makes this a much more challenging threat to deal with.
And I want to turn to Director Patel. I think that's a good, important segue to get your assessment. And I also want to add another aspect of the question. We're working on a 9/11 Commission review, 25-year review. What other tools do you need to make sure that we are able to have the most robust, effective CT efforts?
Yeah, thank you, Congresswoman. Just real quick, so last year we had 2,300 arrests related to foreign terrorist organizations. We had 700 counterterrorism arrests, and the FBI had 640 counterterrorism disruptions where we stopped attacks on the homeland. Specifically in December, we stopped 4 in an 18-day span. What I need is specifically highlighted in the Norfolk attack. In Norfolk, an individual who was convicted of terrorism and sentenced based upon that conviction.
This is one of those plays I would make live.
The Department of Justice in the first Trump administration sought a sentence of
I
240
think this is
months.
sales,
The judge
but
in that case downward
is it
departed
worth
and gave
it?
variance to nearly half that sentence.
I would only want to be in the play for like a couple days. At most, like 2 days at most. Like I'm basically trying to replicate this exact move. This 1, 2, 3 day move. So
for someone who should not be in this country, who wants to attack and kill American citizens and American service members.
Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields. Mr. Castro.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all for your testimony today. I want to start
Oh, you know,
with
they're
the
coming out
question
high.
about Iran and discuss first how the war began. Secretary Rubio told us that Israel was going to strike Iran regardless, and that doing so would have triggered Iranian retaliation against U.S. forces already in the region. And Director Ratliff, you seem to affirm that in comments just a few
Probably.
minutes ago.
I could agree
So
with that.
rather than tell Israel to stand down, the president joined the war. The Congress and the American people still don't know what the president's actual goals are. And yet,
Type shit.
we
That's
have
important.
lost 13 U.S. service members.
That's important.
But
You don't fight no wars for no
The
reason.
president has said that he wants a deal. He said Iran wants to make a deal and that he's not ready because, quote, the terms aren't good enough yet.
Terms aren't good
Yet,
enough.
they just killed Ali Larijani, the de facto leader of Iran, who, while not a friend of the United States, would have been the person to negotiate any agreement with. The president explicitly said that the United States did not strike Iran's energy infrastructure because, in his words, having to rebuild it, quote, would take years. Yet this morning, Israel struck the South Pars gas field, the world's largest natural gas reserve, triggering Iranian attacks on Qatari gas facilities. Oil prices are up 15% in the last 24 hours. In San Antonio, my hometown, where I represent, the cost of gas has gone up nearly 40% in 3 weeks. Last night, the president said that the United States knew nothing about the attack and called on Israel to stop similar attacks on energy. Israel denies this and says that the attack was cleared by the United States. So my question is, what does the intelligence community assess Israel's goals in this war to be? And are those goals aligned with the goals of the United States?
That bitch hit 120?
I'm thinking carefully here about what can be said in this open setting versus a closed setting.
Are the goals aligned?
The objectives that have been laid out by the president are different from the objectives that have been laid out by the Israeli government.
And how do they differ?
We can see through the operations that the Israeli government has been focused on disabling the Iranian leadership and taking out several members, obviously beginning with the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, and they continue to focus on that effort.
And how does that differ from our goals?
The president has stated that his objectives are to destroy Iran's ballistic missile launching capability, their ballistic missile production capability, and their Navy, the IRGC Navy and mine laying capability.
So the death and destruction continues. The economic cost to the United States, to Israel, to the Gulf states, and to the world continues to increase. So I want to ask you, to the best of your knowledge, do you know whether Israel is supportive of the president's call to make a deal with Iran?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know Israel's position on that.
And to what do you attribute Israel's decision to strike Iranian energy infrastructure, despite President Trump's call to keep those facilities off limits?
I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah. National
So they ignore the
Intelligence
president.
Community.
Do you agree with that?
I'm not privy to any of their deliberations or what went into their calculus in launching this or other attacks. I'm not. We are not involved with in the operational element of this. We're providing continuously on a daily basis the intelligence assessments of the events that are occurring. And
That's literally
I
the
guess,
job.
I know the FBI can't because they're domestic, but can anybody else at the table provide any insight into that?
No, not at all.
I guess I'm not sure what the question you're asking, Congressman Castro. I guess a couple of things. The goals that the president set out are clearly defined. The D&I related those. What was not included is a goal of the U.S.
Well, Director, let me
the U.S.
start with this.
campaign was
Let me
not
start with this
engaged
question.
in
You asked what my
regime
question is.
change, which is
Let me reclaim my time, Director. Come on. Do you know why Israel decided to strike that infrastructure,
I wouldn't-
despite the fact that the president said it should be off limits?
I wouldn't speak for Israel, and
What do you guys know?
We're at war. What do you guys know?
We'll have to take that for the record.
Yes, let's take it for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to
Niggas
welcome
is
the
some
panelists
hoes,
here today.
bro. Really though. Really some cowards,
Today's
bro.
March 19th.
What are you
On
scared of,
April
bro? You're a
19th,
part of the national intelligence community. Let's fucking. It's like they only willing to drop nuts for one person.
It's been talked about many times, but up to 60% of the president's daily
The American
briefing
people deserve to know.
from FISA 702. And we look at the successes that we've had in protecting the homeland and also the conflicts the U.S. has been involved with. The flawless operation in Venezuela.
What is
Operation,
Monday.com?
Fury in Iran.
Probably
troop protection.
a.
The successes we've had on the battlefield in Ukraine, the recovery and release of the Hamas hostages in the tunnels in Israel, all derived
Oh, it's a
from FISA
Israeli company.
702. There is not a military operation that we've been involved with where FISA 702 was not, as Director Ratcliffe has said, been indispensable to the United States in the protection
It was like
of our
HR
country.
management tool.
Director Patel has also said FISA 702 is indispensable. We're 30 days away from it going dark. Director Ratcliffe, can you clarify the President's position on an 18-month clean reauthorization and how that's going to proceed moving forward?
Congressman, thank you. Thank you for highlighting this issue. So the President is in favor of an 18-month clean reauthorization of FISA 702. And I would add to that, I'm heartened by the fact to hear that the chairman of this committee and the ranking member are in agreement with that. And I know there's bipartisan support for that, and there should be. And I know this is an important vote for you to take, but I would ask that you all consider when you do that, when you look at the fact that former DNIs and former CIA directors and former FBI directors and DIA directors and NSA directors across Republican and Democrat administrations are in support of FISA 702 in its current form. These are the people that are making the decisions to keep Americans safe. And so I wish the reauthorization was longer than 18 months, Congressman. I think that this is something that I wish you all would consider for longer than that, so that regardless of who the president is in the future, he or she would have the benefit of, as you said, a tool that's indispensable across administrations, provides more than half of the important actionable intelligence that the president and the commander-in-chief relies upon.
Thank you for that. Director Gabbard, you're supportive of the 18-month extension the President's seeking without a warrant requirement?
That is the president's position, and that is the position of the intelligence community.
And you will be supporting that, correct?
I will support the president's decision to execute this.
I will support
Thank
father.
you. Director Gabbard,
Of course.
we implemented 2 years ago a number of reforms, actually 56 of them, that were part of the Reforming Intelligence and Securing America Act.
Oh, I was probably looking at this a
And that
long
was done
time
in a
ago.
bipartisan way. That was a reflection of what we thought were problems
And
with
it shows
FISA
into
702, going back
right,
during the first Trump administration and even before that.
neutral
These
structure,
reforms
push
that have
down,
been
human
put in
correction
place
here.
and that you have helped implement. We wonder if you could talk
It's like sometimes you
specifically
do
about
wanna
those
be in
reforms on the cutting down of FBI
in the
agents
middle of
having
structure.
access to querying of FISA
Obviously, the
information.
best spots here
The
and
fact
here,
that
but
there are criminal penalties now for FBI agents that are engaged in inappropriate activity as it relates to FISA. Please tell us some of those reforms and how those have been implemented. Director Patel.
Sorry, I thought you were asking DNI.
Not
Absolutely.
even
So
paying
we've gone
attention.
above and beyond what RISA requires since I became director 13 months ago. We not only require supervisory special agents to approve the
That's the last
very
bit Aaron
requested
talking about, 'cause I
US
just,
persons. We also
their customer
require
service
general
isn't too
counsel,
bad.
office of lawyers to come in and agree with that request before we can proceed. Also, we have that we used to, before this, had a default which allowed queries when we were utilizing our system to say it automatically searches 702. You now have to actually opt in and select that box to make sure that you are intentionally doing so. On top of that, we've reduced the number of personnel at the FBI from
Question
6,600 before I got there to 3,500 that have access to it.
Mm-hmm.
Not that use it, but that have access to it.
this is the bullet line.
Gone above and beyond what RISA requires.
It's
in terms of if
the
if you
bottom
misuse it
one that
unintentionally or
is
recklessly,
tough
if you use
to
it
kinda
misuse it unintentionally,
say.
then you type the name wrong in terms of spelling or whatnot. If
Right.
your access
I
is
would-
suspended,
I guess
you're
it would-
retrained.
you would
If
say it's
recklessly
this.
use it, you're immediately terminated your access forever.
Thank you.
Mr. Crow.
Thank you, Chairman. Director Gabbard, it is your job and the job of your agency and department to assess the views of Iranian leadership, their policy beliefs, and policy positions, correct?
Yes,
That includes now deceased Ali Khamenei of Iran, correct?
yes,
And the now leader, his son Mujtaba Khamenei, correct?
yes,
The son is considered more of a hardliner than his father, isn't that correct?
yes,
So hardline that even some of Iran's leaders thought he was too aggressive, isn't that correct?
that is the intelligence community assessment, yes.
Mujtaba, the son, is particularly close to the brutal Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and their most hardline commanders, correct?
That is the intelligence community assessment.
He was involved in ordering violent crackdowns on Iranian protesters, including their murder, correct?
Yes,
And we don't know if the son will continue his father's religious ban on developing nuclear weapons, is that
it
correct?
is unknown at this time.
You testified before this committee last year that the elder, now deceased Khamenei, had in 2003 banned the nuclear weapons program, or suspended it, correct?
There was a fatwa in place that stated that,
And that fatwa remained in place last year when you testified before this committee, correct?
yes.
And that fatwa remained in place
So fatwa.
Recently, correct?
As far as I know, it has not been lifted.
Yeah, you're aware of no information that would lift that fatwa.
So far,
I'm not aware of any intelligence reporting that states that. To be clear on the Mojtaba, the son who has been named to replace him, it is unclear of his status or his involvement. He was injured very severely through one
So
of the
it's-
Israeli strikes.
It's basically
And so the decision making is
is
unclear
Islamic
about
law.
what's happening in the Iranian
So
leadership.
it's unclear. So we're less certain of the positions of Iranian leadership and their intentions than we were 60 days ago, correct?
That's an accurate assessment.
Well, one of your jobs is to create products assessing Iran and the threats it poses to the United States, correct?
Yes,
And that includes potential outcomes for military action, correct?
it includes potential outcomes of a variety of scenarios.
Like in the likelihood of those outcomes.
Yes,
Generally, when you make assessments about threats facing the United States,
Interesting.
you will look at, in Iran, in any instance, the likely scenarios that have come out of military action, correct?
the intelligence community takes all of those factors into account when they create these assessments.
When you look at the threats posed by foreign countries, you also assess timelines to those threats, correct?
What do you mean by timelines?
Like a breakout time, for example, for nuclear weapons for the development of ballistic missiles.
Yes, based on the information available at any given time.
In the timeline also for potential terrorist attacks, correct?
Broadly, yes,
It
assesses
is
all
common
matters
practice
available.
for the
at
IC
that-
to assess the timeline of all threats. Nuclear weapons development, ballistic, right?
Yes,
Ballistic weapons development,
based on the information available, yes.
terrorist attacks,
yes.
Same applies.
cyber attacks, timelines for all of those, correct?
When there is information available that point to that, yes.
In likelihood, as well as the timeline, correct?
Based on the information available.
Timing is important, is it not?
It is an important factor that goes into the assessment.
So it is your position sitting here today that you made no timeline determination as to threats that Iran had facing the United States, correct?
That's a very broad statement, but
No,
when
it's
the
not.
information is available, the intelligence community factors that into their assessment products.
Did you or the IC make any assessments as to the timing of potential threats facing the United States from Iran in the last 90 days?
I'm sure there was timelines factored into the intelligence assessments that were delivered.
Did any of them show imminence?
The imminent nature of a threat is determined by the president based on a totality of the intelligence and information provided to
It
him.
didn't even show that there were attacks anticipated within the next 90
The
days.
president isn't an intelligence
It's too
asset.
simplistic of a statement to say that because it depends on various scenarios occurring or not occurring.
Did those assessments show timelines for the threats that Iran posed to the United States?
The totality of threats, yes, there were timelines involved where it applied and where that information was available. But again,
So she's saying, she's essentially, oh yeah, no. What's up, Allison? Are you, damn, how long have you been on? I just seen this. I'm gonna just text her. I kind of don't want to blast it out to the community just yet. I want us to be more established. Mm. Let's also
Again, to your question about the determination of imminence, the president makes that determination based on the totality of information and intelligence.
The bottom line is there is no
context that he
evidence
has
provided, and you know that, and there's no product that shows the bottom.
And where that information was available. But again, to your question about
Yeah,
the
but I'm asking
determination
you.
of imminence,
like you are the national intelligence community tool for the American people and the government.
the president makes that determination based on the totality of information and intelligence.
The bottom line is there is no
context that he
evidence
has
provided, and you know that, and there's no product that shows that. I yield back.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. I want to expand on the questioning from my colleague, Mr. LaHood, regarding FISA 702. Obviously, it is the imminent issue right before us. Will expire in a month. Unequivocally, the most critical national security tool our nation has to keep us safe from fentanyl, from foreign wars, and everything in between. Mainly, to Director Ratcliffe, but any of you can answer this. One of the most perplexing debates that I've been subject to in my time here is this debate over what warrants are and when they're needed. In the 250-year history of this country, and going back to the very origins of law enforcement, we have always had a warrant requirement.
That's cap.
Had a warrant requirement on the collection of evidence.
Who's talking?
We have never had a warrant requirement on the querying of already lawfully collected data, which is why we don't require police officers to get warrants when they run license plates, querying off of already lawfully collected DOT data. It's why we don't require police officers to get a warrant to enter the evidence locker in their police precinct, which contains already lawfully collected data. It would literally shut down the system. And that's not a warrant requirement, that's a secondary warrant requirement. That's a warrant requirement on steroids. So, Director Ratcliffe, or any of you, I know you've been subject to these questions as well. Is it just a confusion over the difference between the collection of evidence versus the querying of already lawfully collected data? Is it a lack of understanding of what incidental collection is, which is a fundamental precept of law enforcement? But if we have a warrant requirement on steroids for now the querying of already lawfully collected data, just by the numbers, that would require an expansion of the federal judiciary by a factor of 100. It would literally shut down our law enforcement apparatus at perhaps the most dangerous time in our nation's history.
Shut it the fuck down, then.
For any of you, if you could just walk me through your analysis there.
Well, I'll start, Congressman. Thanks for the question. Again, thanks for highlighting this important issue. And
Is it?
as has been pointed out, reforms should be implemented where they're necessary. And I think, speaking for myself, and I know Director Patel supported the reforms from 2 years ago to make improvements, and they did. And so some reforms should be considered. A warrant isn't one of them. And with respect to the reforms that have been implemented, we're talking about, when we talk about Fourth Amendment rights and privacy concerns, we're at a 99.9% compliance rate with respect to that. So I would start by saying, why are you trying to fix what's not broken with something that I can tell you from this seat, the fix would not work. And I go back to my comment before. DNIs, CIA directors, FBI directors, the people that have been in all of these chairs before on a bipartisan basis agree that a warrant will work and don't advocate for it. Congressman, you're correct. This is lawfully collected information.
Ooh, and I can use this screen as a backdrop.
Very fast, and you have to make decisions very quickly, and sometimes in a matter of hours. You have to act on the information that you have lawfully, that has been lawfully collected to interdict drug shipments or terrorist activities, and a warrant requiring you to go to the court to seek probable cause for information that has already been lawfully collected only prevents that from happening. I don't understand. I understand that it's well-meaning for people that are proposing it, but again, I would defer to the people who sit in these chairs and make these decisions who would tell you that it doesn't work.
Okay.
Anybody else want to comment on the warrant requirement?
So, Congressman, I'd love to comment. Thanks for the question. I do just want to add a couple of points. Agree with everything Director Radcliffe said. Not only is this already collected data on foreign personnel outside of the United States, but the data that is being queried has also already been analyzed to ensure that it contains foreign intelligence value, which I think is a very important part of this. And then when we query a U.S. person term, we're not querying for U.S. person information. We're querying for foreign intelligence that has already been evaluated at least once to contain foreign intelligence in the database that's being accessed. And then the final piece that I think is important is that both the FISC and the Department of Justice have established robust legal and compliance rules that we adhere to and that is audited by DOJ for every query that we make.
Oh, yeah?
Thank you. I yield back.
Dr. Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gapper, we've known each other for a long time.
Does any department belong to the American people?
Served together for
Like, will actually answer to the entirety? Like, both sides, like, the hard and easy questions on both sides.
Following the January 3rd,
That'd be the thing I'd be thinking about.
that killed Qasem Soleimani, you gave a speech on the House floor 6 days later, on January 9th, 2020. In this speech, that is currently in the congressional record and available for anyone to view, you stated, quote, President Trump has committed an illegal and unconstitutional act of war, pushing our nation headlong into a war with Iran without any authorization.
It's being accessed and to separate we made.
Gapper, we've known each other for a long time. We were both, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gapper, we've known each other for a long time. We were both elected to Congress in 2012 and served together for a while. I may not have always agreed with your positions, but I respected the consistency of some of your.
Hold on. Not her education. Her previous. What was this? She was a medical specialist. Wait. Maintenance technician. Interesting.
Positions. Director Gabbard, following the January 3rd, 2020 drone strike that killed Qasem Soleimani, you gave a speech on the House floor 6 days later, on January 9th, 2020. In this speech, that is currently in the congressional record and available for anyone to view, you stated, quote, President Trump has committed an illegal and unconstitutional act of war, pushing our nation headlong into a war with Iran without any authorization from Congress. A war that would be so costly and devastating, it would make our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan look like a picnic. On February 28, 2026, the Trump administration, under which you are the president's principal intelligence advisor, launched an illegal and unconstitutional act of war, pushing our nation headlong into a war with Iran without any authorization from Congress. This war has already been costly and devastating. 13 American service members have lost their lives, including Chief Warrant Officer Robert Marsden from my home of Sacramento, California. Approximately 200 service members have been wounded. The Pentagon reported that the first 6 days of Operation Epic Fury cost $11.3 billion. That averages almost $2 billion per day. That was the first 6 days, and now we're in the 19th day of this war. That's ballooned into a regional conflict, putting the lives of Americans and our allies throughout the Middle East in danger. Director Gabbard, do you still believe that strikes against Iran that don't have congressional authorization constitute an illegal and unconstitutional act of war?
Congressman, thank you for the question. The cost of war weighs very heavily upon me and my colleagues here, especially for those of us who have experienced and seen the cost of war firsthand. My own personal and political views, as I mentioned earlier, I was asked and required by Congress and by the President in this role as the Director of National Intelligence to check those views at the door to ensure that the intelligence assessments are not colored by my personal views.
Director
And that's
Gabbard,
exactly what I am
do you
responsible
still
to
believe
deliver.
that war with Iran would be so costly and devastating that it would make our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan look like a picnic?
Once again, in this role, it is essential that I do not allow any of my personal views on any issues to color or bias the intelligence reporting that we deliver to you and to the President.
Director Gabbard, in this hearing 1 year ago, I asked some questions, and I'll paraphrase my exact question. It's like, we should keep politics out of this, even if the President disagrees with a directive, if it goes against his personal wishes, if he's considering an order that potentially is unconstitutional or illegal or compromises our security, I want your word that you will always provide and give the honest advice to the President, even if it will make him angry. I asked you that question. I'm going to read your answer. And to your specific question, the answer is yes. I will inform the President of that accurate, timely, unbiased intelligence reporting, whether it is something that agrees with an assumption or a view or an objective or not. That's my responsibility to him and to the American people. Director Gabbard.
It's always thinking about the American people on the front end. But after they get into that damn office,
to the President.
like you
I have
need.
delivered the intelligence community's assessments to the President.
There was no imminent nuclear threat to the United States. There was no evidence of imminence that Iran was going to attack American assets. That was different from anything they've done over 4 decades. That was going to attack our homeland. There was no imminent threat. Imminent is defined in the dictionary as something that is about to happen. Not
It'd be
something
like,
that's been happening for 4 decades.
the reason why you need some sort of intelligence is because
imminent said this is about to happen, did you deliver that assessment to the
It'd be
president?
like blowing up.
I delivered the
It'd be like blowing up Australia.
analysis of the threats, the severity
And
of
then
those threats,
telling the world
along with assessments of the different scenarios and contexts that
that they were
exist
gonna
in the Middle East.
blow us up.
The president owes it to the American people
And
to
then
go on television to explain to
The American people
service
asked
members
the intelligence community of our government where are their reports,
explain that directly to the American people.
and
What the imminent
be
threat
like, we don't have the reports, but
Advise the members that a vote has been called. It's a single vote, and if members want to shuttle back and forth so we can maintain the continuity of the hearing, we'll do that. So if you start to see it, just to our witnesses, you know how this works. They'll be moving in and out to go address that vote and then returning to their seat. But at this time, I recognize Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, for the record, I would like to submit an article from Politico dated February 24th, 2026. And the title of it is Head of State of the Union Dems Demand Trump Make Iran Plans Public. I think most Americans understand that if the President of the United States makes those plans public, then the enemies get to see them
Without objection, so ordered.
and that was the date of the State of the Union. Director Patel, I'm going to come to you very quickly, and then I'm going to move on. But I listened closely.
yeah, but
to,
you could talk big plans without getting specific.
yesterday about
You could say, this is the plan we want for Iran. This is what we want Iran to do, or this is what our position on Iran. We're not going to talk tactical, right? We'll talk strategic, or even just strategic. But you don't have to say, yeah, and then we're going to send in the Navy SEALs, SEAL Team 6 on November 5th on this day, and we're going to do a surveillance on this with these assets. Like that's obviously that's obvious.
He now has a life sentence.
What's your grand scheme of things? That's all we're asking.
Justice Department has taken to pursue justice.
Because if you don't tell us what your grand scheme of things, and then you start blowing countries up,
I think you're referring to Congressman.
and they start retaliating, and then American people get killed, and it's just like,
I'm referring to this individual.
well, why should we even?
Murdered, and a man now has life
Why
in
should
prison.
we? Why should I send my 18-year-old son to join the military when you're gonna blow shit up, and he's gonna be in the area, and we don't know why you're blowing shit up?
That someone is dead and someone else has life in prison, and it was the scammers that did it. That my heart goes out to both families, but the scammers are the ones that need to pay the price. They're the guilty party here. Director Gabbard, you made a lot of changes at ODNI, changes that I think were necessary, that I want to give you the chance to talk about. So what concrete steps in ODNI 2.0, what are they taking to address politicization, weaponization of intelligence, and unauthorized leaks, and how will these reforms help rebuild public trust in the intelligence community and help the United States?
No one's trying to hear that shit.
What is happening?
Okay. Well, the president then clarified this is not the case, and that America entered into joint operations with our ally. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If I can start by talking about something I was disappointed in from the administration about comments made by members of the administration that Israel drew the United States into conflict with Iran, seeming to buy conspiracy theories that scapegoat Israel, while dismissing that Iran poses a persistent threat to America and our service members and diplomats in the region. Well, the president then clarified this is not the case, and that America entered into joint operations with our ally under our own accord. Many still seem confused about what precipitated this conflict and the threat Iran posed to us directly. So if I could ask Director Radcliffe just a couple questions.
The Epstein stuff is crazy still too. That's just so allegedly.
Well, good morning. Yesterday at Dover Air Force Base, President Trump, the chairman, and I stood in solemn silence as heroes came home. Flag draped caskets. We honored them. We grieved with their families, and we listened. What I heard through tears, through hugs, through strength, and through unbreakable resolve was the same family after family. They said, finish this. Honor their sacrifice. Do not waver. Do not stop until the job is done. My response along with that, the president, was simple. Of course, we will finish this. We will honor their sacrifice. Their sacrifice only steals our commitment. I wear this bracelet. Staff Sergeant Jorge Oliveira, who was one of my sergeants, or one of my specialists in Guantanamo Bay. He deployed later to Afghanistan, where he was killed on 19 October 2011. Killed 10 years after 9/11, 15 years ago. He was one of the 1%. Best of America. Not just a guardsman, but a law enforcement officer back home, and a family man. I remember him every day, just like some of the other men and women of our generation. Destroy missiles, launchers, and Iran's defense industrial base so they cannot rebuild. Destroy their navy, and Iran never gets a
But it's just a cycle. We're gonna always have to destroy their shit.
To the patriotic members of the press, nobody can deliver perfection in wartime. This building knows that more than anyone. But report the reality.
There's gotta be a better
We're
way.
winning decisively and on our
It
terms.
just has to be.
Iran is a vast country, and just like Hamas and their tunnels, they've poured any aid, any economic development, humanitarian aid into tunnels and rockets. That's what they did with Hamas. Iran has funneled decades of state resources, not to their people, but into missiles and drones and proxies and buried
We do the
facilities.
same thing.
But we are hunting them down, methodically, ruthlessly, and overwhelmingly, like no other military in the world can do, and the results speak for themselves. To date, we've struck over 7,000 targets across Iran and its military infrastructure. That is not incremental. That is overwhelming force applied with precision. And again, today will be the largest strike package yet, just like yesterday was. As I've said from day one, our capabilities...
I wonder if they
continue
use
to
AI to
build,
help them with their
continue to
speeches.
degrade. We're hunting and striking death and destruction from above. Iran's air defense is flattened. Iran's defense industrial base, the factories, the production lines that feed their missile and drone programs, being overwhelmingly destroyed. We've hit hundreds of their defense industrial bases directly. Their ability to manufacture new ballistic missiles has probably taken the hardest hit of all. Ballistic missile attacks against our forces, down 90%.
Floor and home
Same with
decor.
one-way attack UAVs, think kamikaze drones, down 90%. Now the Iranians will still shoot, we know that, but they would shoot a lot more if they could. They can't. The last job anyone in the world wants right now? Senior leader for the IRGC, or the siege. Temp jobs, all of them. And to borrow a page from Admiral Ernest King in World War II, we've decided to share the ocean
IRBCs.
with Iran. Senior leader for the IRGC, or the
IRGC.
siege. Temp jobs, all of them. And to borrow a page from Admiral Ernest King in World War II, we've decided to share the ocean with Iran. We've given them the bottom half. We've damaged or sunk over 120 of their Navy ships, with battle damage assessments pending for many more. See, oftentimes we have to wait a few days on battle damage assessments to get the real number. Their surface fleet is no longer a factor. Their submarines, they once had 11, are gone. Their military force are crippled. Iran has terrorized the United States and our interests for 47 years. Their core industries, not steel or agriculture, tourism, their core industries are state-sponsored terrorism, proxy militias, underground networks, ballistic missiles, and a violent, messianic, Islamist ideology chasing some sort of apocalyptic endgame. A regime like that, refusing to abandon its nuclear ambitions, is not just a regional problem. It's a direct threat to America, to freedom, and to civilization. The world, the Middle East, our ungrateful allies in Europe, even segments of our own press, should be saying one thing to President Trump. Thank you. Thank you for the courage to stop this terror state from holding the world hostage with missiles while building or attempting to build a nuclear bomb. Thank you for doing the work of the free world. Yesterday's ceremony reminded us why we fight. Not for nation building or democracy promotion, but to crush direct threats to America, Americans, and our interests. We fight to win, and we are winning, on our terms, following our objectives. My 13-year-old son popped into my office last night while I was editing these remarks. He asked about the war and the families I met at Dover. And I looked at him and I said, they died for you, son, so that your generation doesn't have to deal with a nuclear Iran. It's the truth. And they did. So to the families who said, finish this, we will.
And a privilege for me to be there and to say thank you to their families. And I want to mention their names this morning. From the 6th Aerial Refueling Wing out of MacDill Air Force Base, Florida, but stationed as part of an active associate unit at Birmingham, Alabama, Major Alex Klenner, John Alex Klenner, Major Ariana Savino, she was posthumously promoted from captain to major, and Technical Sergeant Ashley Pruitt, the boom operator on that crew. From the 121st Aerial Refueling Wing, Ohio Air National Guard out of Rickenbacker Air National Guard Base in Columbus, Ohio, Captain Seth Koval, Captain Curtis Anks, and now Master Sergeant Tyler Simmons, who's also promoted in the boom operator on that crew. To a person and every family member I spoke with yesterday, they all shared that their family members loved serving, they loved being part of a great team and a crew, and they loved airplanes and aviation. Our nation's tanker crews really are unsung heroes, incredible warriors who put their lives on the line so we can continue to take the fight to an enemy. I've personally witnessed their courage and tenacity many times, from the morning of September 11th, where they answered my call for some help, to the skies over foreign countries where they've come forward out of their safe tanker track to give me gas when I simply could not leave a ground force that was engaged in a firefight. They've answered the call and come forward time and time and time again. I'm filled with incredible pride and gratitude for all that the tanker crews do, our pilots, our boom operators, and the maintainers. And to the families of our 6 fallen, know that we share your grief. Our nation will never forget their sacrifice, and we will never forget their names. Our entire joint force mourns with you today, and will continue to remember their incredible gift of a great example for all of us. Now let me turn to an operations update. U.S. CENTCOM remains on plan to achieve our military objectives and remain unrelenting in our pursuit of Iranian missile capabilities, UAV capabilities, and their Navy, and as the Secretary said, their industrial base. Each day we continue to attack deeper into Iranian territory. As reported by U.S. Central Command yesterday,
But no one
U.S.
answers
military
why.
5,000-pound penetrator weapons into underground storage facilities, storing coastal
No
defense
one-
cruise missiles and
like,
other support equipment. These
where's
weapons
the-
are
where's
specifically
the-
designed
where's
to get
the-
through concrete and/or rocks and function after penetrating. Iraq is now in the fight across the sun to harm Americans or our partners. Last Friday, Admiral Cooper and the CENTCOM team conducted precision strikes against more than 90 targets on Clark Island, which included all of their military-only infrastructure, which included air defenses, naval base, mine storage, and deployment facilities. And as the Secretary mentioned, we continue to strike against Iran's defense industrial base, and will continue to do so. Today, I want to continue my theme of talking about members of our incredible joint force. Today, I want to talk about some exceptional airmen who are engaged in the fight daily. United States Air Force, Air Force Reserve, and Air National Guard crews within our bomber force, the B-1s, B-2s, and B-52s, and the airmen on the ground who maintain and load these weapon systems. They are the backbone of America's long-range strike capability, and their contributions to Epic Fury have been decisive. Assigned to STRATCOM under Admiral Rich Correll and supported by TRANSCOM, the tanker force that we've talked about, under the command of General Randall Reed, every mission is designed to achieve overwhelming outcomes on behalf of the United States and our allies. Last weekend, I had the chance to go out and see some of our deployed bomber forces, the B-1 and B-52 crews, and I had a chance to sit down with some young aviators and maintainers and ask them, how do you feel? Tell me about your typical day. And these are crews comprised of between 2 in this airplane, where they've been.
What does it mean that they have that capability?
There's nothing like capabilities. The President has given us every capability we
With professional serve inside striking with you.
Objectives, and what is the endgame updated degradation strike target numbers you laid out? How close would you say we are towards achieving the President's objectives, and what is the endgame of the operation without divulging any sensitive battle plans?
Well, we wouldn't want to set a definitive time frame on that, but as we've said, we're on plan. So we're looking at those metrics very closely, relaying that to the President and the National Security team, but feel confident that as, again, we're more stand in means we're over the top, even further in, and we have even more of an exact sense of what we're striking and why, and even more dynamically, meaning because the intelligence improved, we're able to more quickly identify targets when they, let's say they come out of an underground facility where they've been hiding, and able to strike it before it strikes or right after it shoots. But we're very much on plan, and that's why I want to speak to the American people here. You hear a lot of noise about widening or new missions or speculation about what we should or should not be doing. This is a clear set of objectives. The President has given us every capability we need to accomplish that. We've got the best in the world in uniform executing it on the ground. They believe in and are invested in this mission, and it will be at the President's choosing, ultimately, where we say, hey, we've achieved what we need to on behalf of the American people to ensure our security.
So they'll take it as far as they fucking want
very
to.
much on track. Absolutely. Yes, Ray.
Good morning,
Okay.
Secretary David Zia, Voice News. What countries have been the most cooperative with us, including the Gulf states, as Europe hedges? And I also wanted to ask you, the internet blackouts by the regime, it's been shut down for weeks. Is the U.S. military playing a role in fighting against the regime, blocking VPN networks and satellites and other things? Is there a role for the U.S. military there?
Obviously, on the allies and partners side, Israel from day one has been an incredible and capable partner, willing and able. There's nothing like capabilities. The partners that are able to use them. The Gulf states have stepped up incredibly. In fact, Iran's reckless attempt to strike civilian infrastructure and other things has brought countries who maybe would have not been as all in as they are today squarely into our orbit. We're proud to be defending with them, standing with them, you name it. UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and others who have been right there. And we're grateful for that kind of support. As far as the internet, we're watching the regime try to tighten its grip as much as possible. We're obviously taking countermeasures, many of which we can't talk about here, to ensure that messaging is delivered, not just to the Iranian people writ large, but to the right audiences, certain audiences that need to hear certain things about what their fate might look like or what their choices are. So even though that regime is trying really hard to ensure the world can't see, right? They want to put out fake AI-generated images, which, by the way, sometimes our press happens to fall for, like the Abraham Lincoln on fire and turning around. These AI-generated images are meant to make it look like something's happening when the exact opposite is. So they make up fake reports and fake images to lie to their own people to try to make it. But even then, their own people can barely receive a lot of those messages and communicate because of the blackout that they've imposed upon them. But we work around that for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Secretary, General, overnight, Iran launched missiles across the Gulf. They managed to hit the Saudi oil refinery on the Red Sea. What does it mean that they have that capability now, 3 weeks into the war? And Mr. Secretary, you mentioned civilian infrastructure. Iran seems to be treating U.S. diplomatic outposts, embassies, consulates like they are legitimate hard targets in the region now. What is the Pentagon doing to, I guess, secure those assets, stop those attacks?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question on the missile strikes. You know, as we said and have always said clearly, they came into this fight with a lot of weapons. This is why we continue to be as aggressive and assertive as we can against their ballistic missile capability, both their medium-range ballistic missile capability and their short-range missile capability. So we are continuing to hunt and find them and kill them, and we will continue to do so. So they still retain some capability.
What was the first one?
Continuing capability. Sit on the
The Pentagon doing to, I guess, secure those assets, stop those attacks?
Absolutely.
Now, into the war. And Mr. Secretary, you mentioned civilian infrastructure. Iran seems to be treating U.S. diplomatic outposts, embassies, consulates like they are legitimate hard targets in the region now. What is the Pentagon doing to, I guess, secure those assets, stop those attacks?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question on the missile strikes. You know, as we said and have always said clearly, they came into this fight with a lot of weapons. This is why we continue to be as aggressive and assertive as we can against their ballistic missile capability, both their medium-range ballistic missile capability and their short-range missile capability. So we are continuing to hunt and find them and kill them, and we will continue to do so. So they still retain some capability. And we have layered defenses throughout the region that will allow us to protect those. And we're working with our partners across the Gulf region to help them improve any defensive capabilities that they may need.
To that point on capabilities, you know, Iran's an energy-rich country, could be, should be. Instead, like so many other places driven by radical ideology, they've spent that money instead of investing in their people. That's why you had millions of Iranians protesting, because they felt like their condition, quality of life didn't match what it could be or should be. And what was the Iranian state? There's a reason we call Iran the #1 state sponsor of terrorism, because they took the money they make and they invested in tunnels, and they invested in missiles, and they invested in launchers and UAVs, and we are destroying and degrading that in historic proportion. But it doesn't mean they won't still have some try to hold people at issue, which is why we're fighting every single day to continue to compel. And you mentioned embassies and consulates. Unlike previous administrations, we are doubling and tripling down on ensuring that our people,
this is a monster.
Department of State, whatever they do, are secure in those facilities. And the best defense is a good offense. And so we're not afraid to go after and kill anybody. We have a lot of them attempting to target our diplomatic facilities. Iran, you know, we're not surprised that they would indiscriminately target. We're still seeing that. Jerry.
As part of the justification for the war against Iran, the White House has laid out in fairly comprehensive fashion that the Iranian regime's 47 years of terrorism aimed at the U.S., including pointing to the IRGC's provision of weapons and EFPs to help kill Americans in Iraq. The Pentagon in 2019 assessed Iran was responsible for the deaths of at least 603 service members in Iraq, but there hasn't been a similar public accounting by Iran's role helping the Taliban in Afghanistan. And that also hasn't been part of the White House's public argument. I was wondering if you could speak to Iran's role in helping the Taliban during the war in Afghanistan. And Chairman, as you and the Secretary eloquently spoke about 13 U.S. service members been killed so far during Operation Epic Fury, I was wondering what lessons have been learned from those deaths, both from Iranian strikes, from an aircraft refueling accident. How are those lessons being applied to the current conflict, and how are those lessons going to be applied to a potential conflict in Libya?
Thank you. Well, thank you for the question. And it's true. In a town that can have...
Getting hungry!
President Trump does not. He remembers what this Iranian regime was founded on, what their declaration is.
Oh!
They stated that. They intended to, in every way, try to accomplish that, kill Americans in any theater they can. Embassies for quite a long time. In Iraq, that was the deadliest weapon, was the EFP, the explosively formed penetrator. I was there when that tactic and technique started to emerge, and the realization was it wasn't just jihadis putting together 155 rounds, daisy-chained. It was an entire state, a country with its apparatus able to mold steel in a way that was specifically designed to penetrate American armor and kill Americans. This was not, maybe we send them a couple of thoughts about how to build a bomb. This was Iran specifically passing technology and wherewithal and personnel into Iraq to kill Americans specifically. I know the number said to be 600. A lot of us think it's higher than that, given the amount of capability they brought in. So they have been at war with us, whether we acknowledge it or not, for 47 years. The same goes in Afghanistan. Name the Islamist enemy, whether they are Sunni or Shia, because this is a Shia regime, Sunni or Shia, and Iran's been willing to harbor them as long as that group is willing to try to kill Americans. So the enemy of their enemy has been their friend as well in the Islamist world. So Iran, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's around the world, has been targeting Americans. And what they wanted in this context, and what President Trump would not tolerate, is a regime of that nature being closer and closer to nuclear capabilities, a capability they would have said they would want to use, and we ought to believe what our enemies say they would do if they got the most dangerous weapon in the world. So it's been across every theater that Iran's been a threat to America, and sometimes we have to remind folks of that, but thank goodness we have a commander-in-chief who, on behalf of this country, has internalized that and said, hey, we're going to do something about it.
Jerry, I do want to talk about the lessons learned question because it's important to me. I won't share particular tactical lessons, and the KC-135 incident is under investigation, but I do want to talk about how I think about this and how we think about it, and this is something that I'm pretty passionate about. I believe the Joint Force has to be a very fast learning organization. early, often, and always. And so in each case, both at the strategic, operational, and tactical level, we've charged the joint force to look at themselves and say, what was our plan? Well, first, did we have a plan, yes or no? The answer is always yes, because we plan for literally everything. Did we execute our plan, yes or no? If we did it work? If not, why not? If we didn't execute our plan but did something better, what's the lesson learned associated with that? And then how do we quickly capture those lessons after every loss or every engagement and quickly adopt those lessons and then share them across the entirety of the joint force? And inside the joint staff, we've tasked our J7 Directorate under the lead of Lieutenant General Laszewski, a United States Marine, to be extremely entrepreneurial in harvesting and capturing those lessons in a proactive and not reactive way. In fact, we've got teammates from the J7 who are now spread out across the CENTCOM theater, both here in the States and forward, to ensure that in every opportunity we do not miss a chance to grab that lesson and quickly accelerate it into the practice that we adopt inside the joint force, so that if there's a loss or if there's something that we can learn from, that we learn it not only in the CENTCOM AOR, but we adapt it across all of the combatant commands, not just INDOPACOM. And it's across all of the warfighting functions. I've asked them to look rigorously, to check our egos at the door, to remember this is about what's right, not who's right, and to be clinical around the way we look at lessons learned, because we owe it to the force to do that. Thanks for that question.
Absolutely. Brown jacket in the back. Thank you, Secretary. Jonathan Gray, Report to Politics. As you said, at the end of this war, Iran will be without a missile or drone capability, a navy, or the ability to make nuclear weapons. Since the largest threat and sponsor of terror in the region will be incapacitated, are there plans to move assets and troops out of the Middle East? I guess in a perfect world, a year after the war has ended, what does the military presence in the Middle East look like compared to before the war?
Well, I appreciate the question. I do think when you address a real threat head on, it creates new options on the other side. I think what President Trump refuses to do, which too often this town does, is just sit in the status quo. Nobody can do about that. They've got too much capability. What if this happens? What if that happens? He instead says, what's in the interest of the American people? It's going to take some courage. It's going to take some capabilities. We're going to have to gather some forces there in order to do it. We're not going to tell people how many or how long or what we're willing to do or what we're not willing to do. But if you do that and do that decisively, then out the other end is a recognition that it opens the aperture of what's possible. I mean, President Trump did the same thing in creating an opportunity for the Abraham Accords. Now you've got a situation where a lot of those countries are coming alongside us, recognizing the threat of Iran. So I think our posture in the future will be based first and foremost on our own national security, power projection, the ability to defend.
Okay, this is my last thought. To look at. I haven't found anything.
Look at what makes the most sense going forward.
Yes, right here. I haven't found anything that looks pretty.
Thank you, Secretary Nixon. Two questions for you. The Vice President has
Kinda.
is to denuclearize Iran while also avoiding a larger quagmire. I know that you touched on this. I'd like you to expand on how do you do that? How do you denuclearize the country while also avoiding this, forever war? And then there was a report last night that the Pentagon asked the White House for $200 billion for Iran war supplemental. Can you confirm this, and can you explain why a package this large is necessary?
Well, first of all, none of this would have been possible without Midnight Hammer, without that audacious mission with very clear goals that did obliterate their ability to enrich and the capabilities they have in those facilities. So it created the conditions for Iran to step forward and say, okay, you can reach out and touch us like that in our nuclear ambitions. You can see that we're still trying to do this. Let's make a deal. And President Trump put our two best folks on it, Steve and Jared, and they worked diligently, earnestly. I watched them to try to pursue that deal. And ultimately, I think the whole time Iran sort of said, well, we'll talk. As we build more missiles and as we build more UAVs and we create this conventional umbrella. So